The helicopter blades beat against the desert air as Lieutenant Sarah Chen adjusted her tactical vest one last time. Beside her, a Belgian Malinois named Ryder sat perfectly still, his amber eyes fixed on her face with absolute focus. They had been partners for 3 years, 3 years of training, 2 deployments, and more missions than she could count on both hands. Naval Special Warfare Group 3 had sent them to Forward Operating Base in a classified location where temperatures reached 120 degrees by noon and dust storms could erase visibility in seconds. Sarah was one of only 7 female Navy SEALs in active service, and the only one with a multi-purpose K-9 partner cleared for direct action missions. Ryder wasn't just trained in detection, he was a tactical asset, trained to identify explosives, track targets across difficult terrain, and provide early warning of ambush situations. His record was flawless: 37 successful missions, 0 casualties in any unit he accompanied. The morning briefing had been standard. Colonel Marcus Thornton, newly assigned to command, had reviewed operational protocols with the kind of rigid formality that suggested he was still adjusting to the tempo of special operations. He was Army, a career officer who had spent the last decade in administrative positions at the Pentagon. His eyes had lingered on Sarah longer than necessary, then dropped to Ryder with visible disapproval. "Lieutenant Chen," he had said, after dismissing the others. A word. She had stood at attention while Ryder sat perfectly at her left heel. The colonel circled them both slowly, his boots leaving prints in the thin layer of dust that covered everything on base. "I've reviewed your file," Thornton said. "Impressive record. Your handler evaluations are exceptional." He paused. "But I have concerns about operational protocols regarding animal assets in forward positions." Sarah kept her eyes forward. "Sir, Ryder is certified for all direct action operations. His presence has increased mission success rates by 42% in—" "I'm aware of the statistics, Lieutenant." The colonel's voice was flat. "I'm also aware that attachment to animals can compromise judgment, particularly in high-stress environments." The words hung in the air between them. Sarah felt Ryder shift slightly, responding to the tension in her body language that she thought she had controlled. "With respect, sir, Ryder and I have trained together for 3 years. Yes." Thornton turned to face her directly. "I'm implementing new protocols. K-9 units will rotate handlers every 6 months. It reduces emotional compromise and increases operational flexibility." Sarah's jaw tightened. "That would undermine the entire foundation of K-9 effectiveness, sir. The bond between handler and dog is what makes them—" "Dismissed, Lieutenant." She saluted sharply and left the command tent with Ryder moving in perfect synchronization beside her. Outside, the sun was already brutal. She could feel eyes on her from the other operators scattered around the compound, SEALs who had worked with her and Ryder, who knew what they could do together. Staff Sergeant Mike Torres approached as she reached the kennels. He was the senior K-9 handler on base, a former Marine with 2 Purple Hearts and a face that looked like desert sandpaper. "Heard the colonel wants to rotate partners," Torres said quietly. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. "That's not how this works," Torres continued. "These dogs aren't equipment. They're team members. They bond. They trust. You break that, you get dogs that hesitate. And hesitation gets people killed." Sarah knelt beside Ryder, running her hand along his shoulders. He leaned into her touch, his breathing steady and calm. 3 years of trust. 3 years of reading each other's signals in situations where a second's delay meant the difference between mission success and catastrophe. "He doesn't understand," she said finally. Torres looked toward the command tent. "Then we make him understand, before someone gets hurt." Neither of them knew that within 72 hours, classified combat footage would force Colonel Thornton to confront exactly what he didn't understand. and that the entire base would witness a moment that would redefine how the military viewed the bond between handler and dog. But that morning, all Sarah knew was that someone was trying to take away her partner, and in the desert heat, with another mission already scheduled for the following dawn, that knowledge settled into her chest like a stone. Chapter 2. The Protocol That Changed Everything. The briefing room was crowded with operators from 3 different SEAL teams. Sarah stood near the back, with Ryder lying quietly at her feet, his presence so unobtrusive that visitors often didn't notice him until he moved. The mission parameters scrolled across the projection screen: a high-value target extraction in hostile territory, tight timeline, 0 margin for error. Colonel Thornton stood at the front with Major Rachel Kim, the operations officer who had been running tactical planning since before the colonel arrived. Kim's expression was carefully neutral as Thornton outlined his new protocols. Effective immediately, all K-9 assets will operate under rotational handler assignments, Thornton announced. This ensures continuity of operations if a handler is injured or reassigned. Lieutenant Chen, your dog will be transferred to Sergeant Morrison for the next training cycle. The room went silent. Sarah felt every operator's attention shift toward her. Sergeant Kyle Morrison was a solid handler, competent and professional, but he had been working with explosive detection dogs for 8 months. He had no tactical K-9 experience, no direct action certification. Major Kim spoke carefully. Sir, with respect, multi-purpose K-9s require extensive partnership training. Ryder and Lieutenant Chen have operational chemistry that... Which is exactly the problem, Major. Thornton's voice was clipped. Operational chemistry becomes operational dependency. We need flexibility. Sarah remained silent, but her hand had dropped to rest on Ryder's head. The dog's ears had shifted forward, reading the tension in the room with the same precision he used to detect explosives. Lieutenant Commander James Park, the SEAL team leader, stood slowly. He was a veteran of 14 years, with a reputation for speaking truth, regardless of rank. Colonel, I've run 17 missions with Chen and that dog. Their success rate isn't chemistry, it's capability. Ryder reads situations before our tech does. He's saved lives. I don't doubt the animal's training, Thornton replied, but animals are assets. We don't let personal attachment dictate operational structure. The words landed like a challenge. Sarah saw Torres shift near the door, his expression hardening. Other handlers were present. Men and women who had spent years building the kind of trust that kept teams alive in hostile territory. Sir, Sarah spoke for the first time, her voice steady. Request permission to demonstrate operational protocols before implementation of handler rotation. Thornton's eyes narrowed. Demonstrate what exactly? What Ryder and I can do that can't be replicated with a rotation system. Give me one mission. If the results don't justify the partnership model, I'll support the new protocol. Major Kim glanced at Sarah with something that might have been respect or concern. Park was nodding slowly. Torres had his arms crossed, watching Thornton's reaction. The colonel was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded curtly. One mission. But understand, Lieutenant, if I see any indication that emotional attachment is compromising judgment, the rotation happens immediately, regardless of results. Understood, sir. The briefing continued, but Sarah barely heard the tactical details. Ryder had shifted closer to her leg, his warmth a steady presence. She knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about her partnership with one dog. It was about every handler in every branch who had learned that the bond between soldier and K-9 wasn't weakness. It was the foundation of everything that made them effective. After dismissal, Park approached her in the corridor outside. That was either very brave or very stupid, he said quietly. Sarah looked down at Ryder. He's not equipment, sir. And if one demonstration is what it takes to prove that, then we'll prove it. What if the mission goes sideways? Then we handle it, like we always do. Park studied her for a moment, then nodded. I'll make sure the mission parameters play to your strengths. But Chen, Thornton isn't looking for reasons to support you. He's looking for reasons to prove his point. Then we won't give him any. As Park walked away, Sarah knelt beside Ryder. The dog looked at her with those amber eyes that had seen firefights and extractions, sandstorms and silence. 3 years of trust, 3 years of understanding. One mission, she whispered. We just need to show them what you can do. Ryder's tail moved once, a single thump against the concrete floor that meant he understood. They always understood each other. What Sarah didn't know was that the mission scheduled for 72 hours from now would capture footage that military analysts would study for years. Footage that would show exactly what happened when training, trust, and instinct converged in a moment where hesitation meant death. But first, they had to survive long enough to prove the colonel wrong. Chapter 3. The Mission Brief. The Tactical Operations Center hummed with equipment and quiet voices. Sarah stood beside Major Kim as mission parameters loaded onto the main display. Ryder lay in perfect stillness beside her chair, his breathing barely audible even in the relative quiet of the briefing room. Colonel Thornton entered precisely on time, followed by Lieutenant Commander Park and 3 other SEAL team leaders. The room came to attention briefly before settling into the focused calm that preceded every operation. This is a time-sensitive target extraction, Kim began, pulling up satellite imagery. High-value informant embedded in hostile territory. Intel suggests the compound is rigged with improvised explosive devices and the target is under guard by local militia. Extraction window is 4 hours from insertion. The compound on the screen looked like dozens Sarah had seen before. Concrete walls, multiple entry points, limited sightlines. The kind of place where every corner could hide a threat and every doorway could be wired to explode. Lieutenant Chen and her K-9 will run point on IED detection and threat assessment, Kim continued. The asset has tactical cameras mounted on both handler and dog. Everything will be recorded for operational review. Sarah felt Thornton's eyes on her. The cameras weren't standard protocol for this type of mission. They were there to document exactly what happened, for better or worse. Rules of engagement are defensive, only unless directly threatened, Park added. We go in quiet, extract clean, and minimize contact. Chen, your job is to get us through that compound without stepping on anything that goes boom. Understood, sir. Thornton spoke for the first time. Lieutenant, explain your operational approach with the K-9. Sarah stood, moving to the display. Ryder rose with her, maintaining perfect position at her left side. Ryder is trained to detect 19 different explosive compounds, including homemade materials common in this region. He can identify pressure plates, tripwires, and chemical signatures from up to 30 meters in optimal conditions. More importantly, he reads environmental cues, disturbed earth, unusual objects, behavioral patterns from any individuals we encounter. She pulled up training footage on a secondary screen. Watch his body language. Ears forward means active detection. Head tilt left indicates a chemical signature. Sitting position is a definitive alert for explosives. Every signal is consistent and reliable. And if he's wrong, Thornton asked, he hasn't been wrong in 37 missions, sir. There's a first time for everything, Lieutenant. The room was silent. Sarah met the colonel's gaze directly. Sir, if you're asking whether I trust my dog more than electronic detection equipment, the answer is yes. Ryder processes information faster than any handheld device we carry. He adapts to situations in real time, and he's never compromised a mission. Torres spoke from near the door. Colonel, every handler in this room will tell you the same thing. We trust our dogs because they've earned it. That trust isn't emotional, it's operational. Thornton's expression remained neutral. We'll see. Mission launches at 0400. All personnel will review protocols and equipment checks by 2300. Chen, I want you and that dog running through detection drills until departure. If there's any indication of performance issues, there won't be, sir. After dismissal, Sarah walked the perimeter of the compound with Ryder, running through silent communication drills. Each hand signal had to be precise. Each response had to be instant. They had done this thousands of times, but tomorrow those signals would mean the difference between a successful extraction and a catastrophic failure. Park found her an hour before midnight, watching Ryder work through a mock detection course in the training area. "You know what's riding on this," Park said quietly. "Every mission has something riding on it, sir. This one's different. Thornton wants to prove a point about protocol and detachment. If anything goes wrong, then I take responsibility. But nothing will go wrong." Park was quiet for a moment. "I watched you work with that dog for 2 years. I've never seen a partnership that tight. But Chen, don't let proving Thornton wrong become more important than bringing everyone home." Sarah turned to face him. "That's exactly what I'm trying to protect, sir. The partnerships that bring people home. If rotation protocols get implemented, we lose that. We lose the trust that makes these teams effective. I know, that's why I'm backing you, but be ready for what happens if the footage shows anything less than perfection." After Park left, Sarah sat in the dust beside Ryder. The dog leaned against her shoulder, his warmth solid and real in the cooling desert night. "Tomorrow we show them," she said quietly. "We show them what trust looks like." Ryder's tail moved once against the ground. "Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach." Chapter 4. Insertion. The helicopter's interior was dark except for the red glow of tactical lights. Sarah sat with her back against the vibrating metal wall, Ryder pressed against her leg. 6 other SEALs occupied the opposite bench: Park, Torres, and 4 operators she had worked with on previous missions. Everyone knew their role. Everyone had rehearsed until the movements were muscle memory. The tactical camera mounted on Sarah's vest was active, recording everything. Another smaller camera was fitted to Ryder's harness, positioned to capture his perspective and body language. Somewhere back at base, Colonel Thornton would be watching both feeds in real time. Park's voice came through her earpiece. 5 minutes to insertion. Weather is clear, local activity minimal. Remember, we go silent until extraction. Sarah checked Ryder's harness one final time, running her hands along each strap and buckle. The dog remained perfectly still, his breathing steady despite the helicopter's noise and motion. He had done this before. He knew what came next. The crew chief signaled 2 minutes. Sarah felt the helicopter begin its descent, the subtle shift in angle and engine pitch that meant they were approaching the landing zone. Her hand rested on Ryder's shoulders, feeling the tension in his muscles as he prepared to move. 30 seconds. The helicopter flared, and the side door slid open. Desert air rushed in, carrying dust and the smell of dry earth. Sarah was third out, moving in a crouch with Ryder matching her pace exactly. The helicopter lifted away immediately, leaving them in darkness broken only by moonlight and the dim glow of night vision equipment. Park took point, moving toward the compound wall 300 meters ahead. Sarah and Ryder were second in formation, with Torres and the others spread in tactical spacing behind them. No one spoke. Every communication was hand signals and pre-arranged movements. They reached the outer wall within 6 minutes. Sarah signaled Ryder forward, watching his body language shift into active detection mode. His nose worked the air, then dropped to ground level. He moved along the wall in systematic sweeps, checking for tripwires, pressure plates, or buried explosives. 20 meters, 30. At 40 meters, Ryder stopped. His head tilted left, chemical signature detected. Then his body lowered into a sitting position directly in front of a section of wall. that looked identical to every other section they had passed. Sarah raised her fist. Freeze signal. Every operator behind her stopped moving instantly. She approached Ryder carefully, kneeling beside him to examine what he had found. Buried just beneath the surface dust, barely visible even with night vision, was a pressure plate wired to an improvised explosive device. The placement was sophisticated, positioned exactly where someone scaling the wall would put their hand for leverage. Sarah marked the location with an infrared chemlight, visible only through night vision, then signaled Ryder to continue. The dog moved forward, checking the next section of wall. Clean. He indicated safe passage with a single tail wag. Park's voice was barely audible in her earpiece. Good catch. Moving forward. They scaled the wall using the section Ryder had cleared, dropping into the compound's outer courtyard. Sarah immediately signaled Ryder to sweep the area. The dog moved in expanding circles, nose working constantly. At the northeast corner, his ears shifted forward, active detection, but not an immediate threat. Sarah approached and found a tripwire stretched ankle height between two support posts. She marked it and signaled the team to adjust their path. Ryder had already moved forward, checking the next sector. The main building was 50 meters ahead. Intelligence had indicated the high-value target was being held in a second-floor room, but the route to reach that room was unknown. Every doorway could be rigged. Every hallway could contain hostiles. Park signaled Sarah forward. She moved to the front entrance with Ryder, watching the dog work the doorframe and threshold with methodical precision. His nose traced patterns invisible to human senses, chemical residue, recent disturbances, thermal signatures that indicated human activity or mechanical devices. Ryder sat. Definitive alert. Sarah examined the door more closely with her handheld scanner. The device confirmed what Ryder had detected: pressure-sensitive trigger wired to an explosive charge hidden in the doorframe. Disabling it would take time they didn't have. She signaled Park and pointed to a window access point on the east side. They adjusted approach vectors. Ryder cleared the window area. No explosives, no immediate threats. Two operators went through first, securing the interior room. Sarah followed with Ryder, immediately putting him to work, clearing the hallway beyond. The dog moved with absolute confidence, his body language shifting continuously as he processed information. Left hallway, clear. Right hallway, chemical signature, detected but non-threatening, possibly cleaning supplies. Stairwell ahead. Ryder paused, ears forward, then continued. Safe passage. They reached the second floor without contact. Every step had been guided by Ryder's detection, every threat identified before it could compromise the mission. The tactical cameras captured it all: the dog's precise movements, Sarah's hand signals, the seamless coordination between handler and K-9 that came from 3 years of absolute trust. Park signaled the target room was directly ahead. Sarah moved Ryder forward for a final sweep of the corridor. The dog checked methodically, then sat suddenly in front of the target room door. Another explosive device, more sophisticated than the others, wired to detect electronic tampering. But Ryder had found it before anyone touched the door, before anyone triggered the mechanism that would have killed them all. Sarah marked the location and signaled for the technical specialist. While he worked to disable the device, she kept Ryder in ready position, scanning for additional threats. The dog's focus never wavered. 3 minutes later, the door was open and the target was secured. Extraction proceeded exactly as planned. They moved back through the compound following the same path Ryder had cleared on entry, encountering no surprises and no resistance. The helicopter extraction was smooth. Within 20 minutes of leaving the compound, they were airborne, with the high-value target secured and 0 casualties. Sarah sat in the helicopter with Ryder pressed against her leg, feeling the dog's breathing gradually return to resting rhythm. The mission had been textbook perfect, every threat identified, every decision validated. Somewhere in the Tactical Operations Center, Colonel Thornton had watched it all unfold through two camera perspectives, Handler and K-9, working in absolute synchronization. Now they would see if footage of perfection was enough to change a mind already made up. Chapter 5. The Review. The Tactical Operations Center was crowded when they returned. Sarah had expected a standard debrief, mission parameters reviewed, equipment checked, personnel released to rest. Instead, Colonel Thornton had assembled every K-9 handler on base, along with the SEAL team leaders and Major Kim. The main display showed footage from both tactical cameras, Sarah's vest cam and Ryder's harness mount. Thornton stood at the front with his arms crossed, watching as Kim queued up the relevant segments. "Lieutenant Chen, front and center," Thornton said. Sarah moved forward with Ryder at her side. The dog's ears were slightly back, not stress, but awareness that something significant was happening. Every handler in the room was watching. Torres stood near the door with his arms crossed. Park was positioned behind Thornton, his expression carefully neutral. "The mission was successful," Thornton began. "Target extracted, 0 casualties, no complications. By traditional metrics, this operation was flawless." Sarah waited. The word "but" hung in the air like smoke. "However," Thornton continued, "I want to review specific decision points where the K-9's alerts guided tactical choices." Kim started the footage. The first segment showed Ryder detecting the pressure plate at the outer wall, the subtle shift in body language, the definitive sitting alert, Sarah's immediate response. The IED was clearly visible, once marked, positioned exactly where it could have killed multiple team members. "Handheld detection equipment would have found this eventually," Thornton said. "Eventually isn't fast enough when you're exposed on a hostile perimeter, sir," Park interjected. "Ryder identified the threat in 30 seconds. Our equipment would have taken 3 minutes minimum, with the team standing in an exposed position the entire time." Thornton didn't respond. Kim advanced to the next segment, the tripwire in the courtyard. Again, Ryder's detection was instant and precise. The camera angles showed what Sarah had seen in real time, the dog's ears shifting forward, his body position changing to indicate detection without triggering any alert that might compromise operational silence. Standard sweep protocols rely on visual identification or handheld scanners, Torres interrupted. "Which means slower movement, more exposure time, and higher probability of missing something." That tripwire was positioned below optimal scanning height. A human sweep might have missed it entirely. The footage continued. Every threat Ryder had detected was shown from both camera angles. The doorframe explosive, the secondary device at the target room. Each time, the dog's body language provided clear, unambiguous warning before any team member was in danger. The final segment showed the return extraction, Ryder leading them back through the cleared path, his confidence and precision allowing the team to move quickly through hostile territory with a secured target. When the footage ended, Thornton was silent for a long moment. "The K-9 performed exactly as trained," he finally said. "But this doesn't address my primary concern. The issue isn't capability, it's dependency. What happens when Lieutenant Chen is injured, when she's reassigned? If this dog will only perform at this level with one handler—" "Permission to speak, sir," Torres said. Thornton nodded curtly. "Colonel, you're right that the bond between Chen and Ryder is unique, but you're wrong about why. It's not dependency, it's optimization. Every K-9 team in this room has that same bond with their dogs. It's not a weakness, it's the entire foundation of why we're effective." Another handler spoke up, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, who worked with explosive detection dogs. "Sir, I've been training K-9 units for 8 years. The rotation system you're proposing would destroy operational effectiveness. These dogs don't just follow commands, they read their handlers. They respond to subtle cues that take years to develop. You break that bond, you get dogs that hesitate. And in our line of work, hesitation kills. Dogs are loyal, Thornton replied. They'll bond with new handlers. Eventually, Sarah said quietly. But eventually isn't fast enough when the mission window is 4 hours and the margin for error is 0. Ryder and I don't just work together. We think together. That's what you saw in the footage. Every detection, every decision was happening in real time because we've trained until there's no delay between his alert and my response. Major Kim brought up additional footage, training sequences that showed the progression of Sarah and Ryder's partnership over 3 years. Early sessions where communication was still developing. Recent drills where they moved with such synchronization that it was almost impossible to see where one's actions ended and the other's began. This is the result of time, trust, and repetition, Kim said. You can't replicate it with a 6-month rotation. You'd be starting over every time, and starting over in a combat zone gets people killed. The room was silent, except for the hum of equipment. Sarah could feel the tension. Every handler waiting to see if years of operational success could overcome one colonel's determination to implement standardized protocols. Thornton looked at the frozen image on the screen, Ryder in perfect alert position, Sarah's hand already moving to signal the team before any verbal communication occurred. The footage is compelling, he admitted, but I need more than one successful mission to justify maintaining a system that seems to prioritize individual partnerships over institutional flexibility. Park stepped forward. Then let me show you something else, sir. Chapter 6. The archive Major Kim brought up a new database on the main screen, 3 years of operational records, mission reports and statistical analyses. Park moved to stand beside the display. This is every K-9 supported operation conducted by this unit since Lieutenant Chen and Ryder were partnered, Park explained. 37 missions. 0 handler casualties, 0 K-9 casualties, mission success rate 100%. He pulled up comparative data. Now here's the same unit's performance in the 2 years before Chen and Ryder were assigned. 29 missions, 3 handler casualties, 2 K-9 casualties, mission success rate 86%. Thornton leaned forward, studying the numbers. That's a significant improvement. It's a revolutionary improvement, Park corrected. And it's not just Chen. Look at the other handler K-9 teams with long-term partnerships. He pulled up additional data. Torres and Max, 4 years partnered. 0 casualties, 98% mission success. Santos and Bella, 3 years. 0 casualties, 97% success. Kim added more statistics. Now look at units that have implemented rotation protocols. The numbers on screen told a different story. Handler casualty rates increased by 43%. Mission success rates dropped by 15% on average. And K-9 operational lifespan decreases by 2 years due to stress and confusion from repeated handler changes. Sarah watched Thornton's face as he processed the data. The colonel was many things, but he wasn't stupid. He could see what the numbers were showing. These statistics suggest that long-term partnerships improve outcomes, Thornton said carefully. But they don't address battlefield flexibility. What happens in real-time crisis situations when the primary handler is compromised? We cross-train, Torres answered. Every K-9 unit has a secondary handler who trains regularly with the dog and primary handler, not to replace the bond, but to provide emergency backup. It's already in our protocols. You just haven't seen it because you've been focused on eliminating the primary bond entirely. Show me, Thornton ordered. Kim pulled up training footage from the previous month. Sarah and Ryder working a detection course, with Torres running parallel exercises with his own K-9, Max. Then the handlers switched dogs. The secondary exercises were slower, less fluid, but still functional. Ryder will work with Torres if necessary, Sarah explained, and I can work with Max in an emergency. We practice this monthly, but the effectiveness is maybe 70% of what we achieve with our primary partners. That's enough for emergency situations, but not enough to justify making it the standard operating procedure. Thornton was quiet, studying the footage. Why wasn't I briefed on these protocols? You were, sir, Major Kim said, pulling up documentation. It's in the operational manual you were provided upon assignment. Section 7, K-9 Unit Procedures. The colonel's jaw tightened slightly. Sarah recognized the expression, someone realizing they had made assumptions without complete information. Park spoke carefully. Sir, with respect, the handlers in this room have decades of combined experience. The protocols we follow weren't created arbitrarily. They were developed through trial, error, and hard lessons learned in combat. When you propose rotation systems, you're not just changing paperwork, you're dismantling the foundation of what makes these teams effective. I'm trying to ensure institutional continuity, Thornton replied. Personal attachments can cloud judgment. Attachments can, Torres agreed, but partnerships don't. What Chen and Ryder have isn't emotional dependency. It's operational excellence built on mutual trust and understanding. That's not a weakness to eliminate. It's an asset to protect and develop. Sarah saw something shift in Thornton's expression. Not agreement, but consideration. The colonel turned to her directly. Lieutenant Chen, answer honestly. If I ordered you to rotate to a different K-9 tomorrow, could you function effectively? Yes, sir, Sarah answered immediately. I'm a trained operator. I would adapt and perform my duties, but I would be less effective, and that decreased effectiveness would put missions and personnel at higher risk. Not because I'm emotionally compromised, but because I would be working with a dog I don't know as well, and who doesn't know me. The operational chemistry you dismissed in the first briefing, that's not sentiment, it's survival. Ryder shifted position slightly, moving closer to Sarah's leg. The movement was subtle, but every handler in the room recognized it. A dog, responding to tension in their partner, providing support without command. Thornton noticed it too. His eyes tracked the movement, then returned to the statistical data still displayed on the screen. 100% mission success, 0 casualties, 3 years of documented excellence. I need to review this information more thoroughly, he finally said, but I'm willing to postpone implementation of rotation protocols until that review is complete. It wasn't approval, but it wasn't rejection either. Thank you, sir, Sarah said. Don't thank me yet, Lieutenant. I'm not convinced this model is sustainable long-term, but I'm willing to admit that my initial assessment may have been incomplete. He looked around the room at the assembled handlers. You're dismissed. Chen, Torres, Major Kim, remain for additional briefing. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Sarah and Ryder reach those who still believe in honor. The room cleared slowly. As other personnel filed out, Sarah saw Park give her a slight nod, acknowledgement that they had made progress, even if the battle wasn't entirely won. Now, they had to prove that progress wasn't just statistical. They had to show Thornton what trust looked like when everything went wrong. Chapter 7. The test nobody planned. The emergency alert came at 0348 hours after the mission debrief. Sarah was already awake, insomnia that came from years of irregular sleep cycles and the constant low-level awareness that deployment required. Ryder lifted his head from where he slept beside her bunk as the compound alarm began to sound. All personnel to defensive positions, possible hostile breach on the eastern perimeter. Sarah was dressed and moving within 90 seconds. Ryder at her side. The compound's eastern perimeter was the most vulnerable section, a stretch of wall that backed onto rough terrain, providing natural cover for anyone approaching. Multiple detection systems covered the area, but the terrain made visual confirmation difficult. She reached the Tactical Operations Center to find it crowded with personnel. Colonel Thornton was already present, directing defensive positioning. Major Kim was coordinating with perimeter security teams. "Lieutenant Chen, report," Thornton ordered. "Ready for deployment, sir. What's the situation?" "Motion sensors triggered on the eastern approach," Kim explained. "Visual confirmation is negative, but something's out there. Could be animal activity, could be hostile reconnaissance." "Electronic detection?" Sarah asked. "Inconclusive. Terrain is interfering with scanner effectiveness." Thornton turned to Sarah directly. "I need confirmation of what we're dealing with. Can your dog identify whether the trigger was human or animal activity?" "Yes, sir. Ryder can distinguish between different mammal signatures and recent human presence." "Then get out there and tell me what we're facing." Sarah moved toward the exit with Ryder, Torres falling in beside her. "You want backup?" he asked quietly. "Stay on secondary response. If this is hostile, I'll need someone covering extract routes." "Roger that!" The eastern perimeter was lit by floodlights that created harsh shadows across the broken terrain beyond the wall. Sarah approached the sensor location that had triggered the alert, Ryder already in active detection mode. The dog's body language was focused but not alarmed, ears forward, nose working the air currents that flowed through the perimeter gaps. She signaled him to sweep the area. Ryder moved along the wall in systematic patterns, checking ground-level disturbances and air currents for chemical signatures. At the third sensor station, his behavior changed. Head tilted left, chemical detection. Body position lowered slightly, elevated alert status. Sarah keyed her radio. "Command, I have confirmed chemical detection. Human signature, recent activity within the last 2 hours. Can you determine numbers?" Thornton's voice was steady but tense. "Ryder, seek more." She gave the hand signal for expanded search parameters. The dog moved forward, working in careful arcs that swept wider from the initial detection point. At each arc, his body language provided information: intensity of scent, direction of travel, approximate timing. After 3 minutes of methodical searching, Ryder returned to Sarah and sat directly in front of her. His posture was definitive: multiple human signatures, recent passage, direction of travel away from the compound. "Command, assessment is reconnaissance activity. Multiple individuals, estimated 3 to 5, passed this location within 2 hours. Direction of travel is away from our position. Threat level, observation only, no indication of preparation for assault." There was silence on the radio for several seconds. Then Thornton's voice: "Hold position. I'm sending additional personnel for secondary confirmation." What happened next, nobody had planned for. The secondary confirmation team arrived within 6 minutes. 3 operators with handheld detection equipment and visual scanning gear. They began their sweep of the same area Ryder had already cleared. Sarah watched from a position 30 meters back, Ryder sitting calmly beside her. Specialist Marcus Webb was operating the electronic scanner, moving slowly along the perimeter. He was experienced, careful, following standard protocols, but the terrain was difficult, and the equipment's effectiveness was compromised by electromagnetic interference from the compound's own security systems. Webb took another step forward. Ryder's head snapped up, ears forward in sudden alarm. The dog surged to his feet, body rigid with tension. Sarah saw it in the same instant Ryder reacted. Webb's boot was inches from a pressure plate buried in the disturbed earth, positioned exactly where someone conducting a scanner sweep would step to get optimal equipment positioning. "Freeze!" Sarah's voice cut across the perimeter. Webb stopped mid-step, his forward boot hovering above ground. Sarah was moving before conscious thought processed the decision. Don't move, don't shift your weight. Stay exactly where you are. She reached Webb's position with Ryder leading. The dog sat directly beside the pressure plate, his alert unmistakable. Sarah knelt carefully, examining what Webb's scanner had missed. A sophisticated improvised explosive device, buried precisely where perimeter security personnel would stand during a secondary sweep. The reconnaissance team hadn't been observing. They had been setting a trap for exactly this scenario. Command, we have an active IED at the eastern perimeter. Specialist Webb is in immediate danger. I need the explosive ordnance disposal team, and I need them now. Thornton's response was immediate. EOD is en route. Can you stabilize the situation? Sarah looked at Webb's position, 1 foot planted, 1 foot hovering, his entire body weight balanced on the edge of disaster. Affirmative, but we need to act fast. Webb's going to lose balance if he has to hold this position too long. How long can you give us? Depends on how much training he's had in static positioning. Webb, you good? The specialist's voice was tight but controlled. I can hold for 5 minutes, maybe 10. EOD is 8 minutes out. Kim's voice cut in. Sarah made a decision that 3 years of partnership had prepared her for. Webb, on my mark, you're going to shift your weight backward very slowly. I'm going to guide you. Ryder will monitor the pressure plate. If anything changes, he'll alert. Chen, wait for EOD. Thornton's voice was sharp. Sir, Webb doesn't have 8 minutes. This has to happen now. There was a pause, then, proceed. But, Lieutenant, if this goes wrong, it won't, sir. Sarah positioned herself behind Webb, her hands ready to support his weight. Ryder remained seated beside the pressure plate, his attention fixed on the device with absolute focus. Webb, start shifting your weight backward, slow and steady. Don't lift your forward foot, just ease the pressure off gradually. The specialist began the agonizingly slow movement. Sarah watched Ryder continuously. The dog's posture would tell her if the pressure on the plate changed, if the device was triggered, if they had seconds to react, or if the margin for error was shrinking. Ryder's body language remained steady, no change in the device status. Keep going, Sarah encouraged. You're doing great. 30 seconds. Webb's weight was shifting millimeter by millimeter. His breathing was controlled but rapid. 45 seconds. His forward foot was carrying less weight now, his balance transitioning backward. 60 seconds. The pressure on the plate had decreased enough that Sarah could see the slight shift in the device's position. Ryder's ears moved forward fractionally, detecting the change, monitoring, but not alarming. Almost there, Sarah said. Another few seconds. Webb's forward foot lifted clear of the danger zone. Sarah pulled him backward firmly, both of them retreating 5 meters from the pressure plate. The specialist collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. Ryder remained in position, still monitoring the device. Sarah keyed her radio. Perimeter is stabilized. Webb is clear. IED is marked and confirmed active. EOD can proceed when ready. The explosive ordnance disposal team arrived 4 minutes later. They confirmed what Ryder had detected, a sophisticated device positioned specifically to target security personnel responding to the sensor alerts. If Webb had completed that step, multiple casualties would have resulted. When the perimeter was finally secured and the device disarmed, Sarah walked back to the Tactical Operations Center with Ryder at her side. The eastern horizon was beginning to show the first hint of dawn. Another night survived, another crisis managed. Colonel Thornton was waiting outside the TOC, his expression unreadable. "Lieutenant Chen," he said formally, "walk with me." Chapter 8. The Conversation That Changed Protocol. Colonel Thornton led Sarah away from the Tactical Operations Center toward the compound's western perimeter, where they could speak privately. Ryder followed at Sarah's heel. His body language had returned to neutral. The crisis passed, threat assessment complete. The desert morning was cold, that sharp chill that came before sunrise. Thornton stopped at the perimeter wall and stood looking out at the landscape slowly emerging from darkness. "I've been in the military for 23 years, he began. "I've commanded combat units, managed logistical operations, and overseen administrative protocols. I thought I understood what made effective military units." He paused. "I was wrong." Sarah remained silent, waiting. "When I proposed the rotation protocols, I was thinking about standardization, institutional continuity, eliminating variables that might compromise operational flexibility." Thornton turned to face her directly. "What I didn't understand was that some variables aren't weaknesses to eliminate. They're capabilities to develop." He gestured toward Ryder. "Your dog detected that IED before any of our equipment registered a threat. More importantly, he detected Webb's danger before Webb himself understood the situation. That's not training alone, that's partnership. With respect, sir, that's exactly what we've been trying to explain. I know, and I should have listened more carefully." Thornton's expression was serious. "I've reviewed the footage from tonight's incident, frame by frame. Do you know what I saw?" Sarah shook her head. "I saw your hand move toward a signal before Ryder even completed his alert posture. You were already responding to information he was giving you before conscious thought processed what that information meant. That's not handler and animal. That's integration at a level I didn't believe was possible." He pulled out a tablet, showing the footage in slow motion. Sarah watched herself and Ryder, seeing what Thornton had seen, the microscopic adjustments in communication, the shared understanding that happened faster than verbal commands could convey. "This is what 3 years of partnership creates," Thornton continued. "This is what my rotation protocols would have destroyed. And tonight, that destruction would have cost Specialist Webb his life." Sarah felt tension she hadn't realized she was carrying begin to ease. "Sir, are you saying—" "I'm saying the rotation protocols are cancelled permanently. More than that, I'm recommending that Special Operations Command implement mandatory minimum partnership periods for all K-9 teams. 2 years minimum before any consideration of reassignment. 3 years preferred. The data supports it, and tonight's incident proves it." Ryder had moved closer to Sarah's leg, sensing the change in her emotional state. She reached down to rest her hand on his head. "There's more," Thornton said. "I've been in contact with the Pentagon. The footage from your recent mission is being reviewed by tactical training specialists. They want to use it as the foundation for updated K-9 operational protocols across all branches. Sir, your partnership with that dog is going to become the standard, not the exception. The way you communicate, the integration of K-9 capability into tactical decision-making, the trust-based model, it's all being incorporated into new training guidelines." Sarah looked down at Ryder. The dog gazed back at her with those amber eyes that had seen combat and crisis, always steady, always focused. "What changed your mind, sir? Was it the statistics or tonight's incident?" Thornton was quiet for a moment. "Neither. It was watching Webb's face when you pulled him clear of that IED. He knew, absolutely knew, that if your dog hadn't alerted, he would have completed that step. The trust in his expression wasn't about training or protocol. It was about understanding that your partnership with Ryder saved his life." He looked out at the desert again. "I've spent my career believing that emotional distance makes better soldiers, that attachment is weakness. Tonight taught me that trust isn't weakness. It's the foundation of everything that works in combat, and trust takes time to build." Major Kim approached from the TOC, carrying a folder. "Colonel, the after-action report is ready for your review." "Thank you, Major." Thornton took the folder, then turned back to Sarah. "Lieutenant, I'm recommending you for a commendation, both for the original mission and for tonight's actions. Your partnership with that K-9 represents the highest standard of operational excellence. Thank you, sir. But Ryder deserves the same recognition. Already included, there's a K-9 valor citation being processed. Thornton's expression softened slightly. I owe you an apology, Lieutenant. And I owe apologies to every handler on this base. I nearly destroyed something I didn't understand because I was too focused on protocol to see capability. Respectfully, sir, you listened when it mattered. That's what leadership looks like. Thornton nodded slowly. I'm issuing new guidelines this morning. All K-9 teams will be evaluated for partnership optimization. Handlers with exceptional performance records will be prioritized for extended assignments, and the cross-training protocols you mentioned will become mandatory, not to replace primary bonds, but to support them. He looked down at Ryder. How old is he? 6 years old, sir. Multi-purpose K-9s typically work until age 9 or 10 if they stay healthy. So you have 3 or 4 more years together. Yes, sir. Maybe more if he stays fit. Then make them count, Lieutenant, because what you two accomplish together will shape how the military approaches K-9 operations for the next generation. As Thornton walked back toward the TOC with Major Kim, Sarah knelt beside Ryder. The sun was rising now, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber that matched the dog's eyes. You saved someone tonight, she said quietly. You saved Webb. And maybe you saved all of us from protocols that would have made us less effective. Ryder leaned into her touch, his breathing calm and steady. Torres appeared from the direction of the kennels, carrying 2 water bowls. Heard you had an exciting morning. You could say that. Also heard Thornton cancelled the rotation protocols. Permanently. Torres set down the water bowls and knelt to greet Ryder properly. The dog's tail wagged, recognition of another handler, respect for a fellow professional. Good, Torres said, because Max and I were about ready to retire if we got split up. 20 years in the military, and the idea of losing my partner was the first thing that made me consider leaving. He looked at Sarah directly. You did good work, Chen. Not just with the missions, with standing up for what matters. A lot of handlers were watching to see how this played out. It wasn't just me, the whole team backed this. But you were the one in the spotlight, you and Ryder, and you showed them exactly what partnership looks like when everything's on the line. As Torres walked back toward the kennels, Sarah remained sitting in the dust with Ryder. The compound was coming fully awake now. Personnel moving to morning duties, helicopters warming up for routine patrols, the machinery of military operation continuing its rhythm. But something had changed, not just protocols or guidelines, but understanding, the recognition that some bonds weren't obstacles to overcome, they were assets to protect. Sarah stood, brushing dust from her uniform. Come on, partner. Let's get some rest before the next crisis. Ryder rose with her, moving in perfect synchronization. 3 years of trust, 3 years of understanding, and now, thanks to one colonel's willingness to admit he was wrong, the promise of years more to come. Chapter 9. Legacy in the Making. 6 months after Colonel Thornton cancelled the rotation protocols, Naval Special Warfare Group 3 had become something unexpected, a teaching facility. Teams from Army Special Forces, Marine Corps reconnaissance units, and Air Force security forces rotated through for 2-week observation periods focused on K-9 operational integration. Sarah stood in the training area watching the latest group of handlers work through detection drills with their dogs. The afternoon sun was brutal, but the handlers were focused, repeating movements until they became instinct. Ryder lay in the shade beside her, his attention split between watching the training and monitoring Sarah's subtle body language for any indication they were needed. Colonel Thornton approached from the administrative building, accompanied by a 2-star general Sarah didn't recognize. Both wore expressions that suggested something significant was about to happen. Lieutenant Chen, Thornton said formally. "This is Major General Patricia Reeves, Special Operations Command." Sarah came to attention. "Ma'am, at ease, Lieutenant." The general's voice was crisp but not unkind. She looked down at Ryder with genuine interest. "So this is the K-9 that's revolutionizing how we think about handler partnerships. Ma'am, Ryder is one example of what's possible when handlers and K-9s are given time to develop operational chemistry. I've watched the footage from your missions, both the initial extraction and the IED incident. Remarkable work." The general knelt slowly, letting Ryder sniff her hand before touching his head. The dog accepted the attention calmly, his body language indicating assessment but no concern. "He's evaluating you, Ma'am," Sarah said, "determining threat level, emotional state, whether you have experience with dogs." "What's his assessment?" "You pass, Ma'am. He can tell you're comfortable with K-9s and you respect boundaries." Reeves smiled briefly before standing. "Colonel Thornton has recommended sweeping changes to Special Operations K-9 protocols based on what you've demonstrated here. Mandatory minimum partnership periods, revised training guidelines, updated equipment specifications. The recommendations are solid." "Thank you, Ma'am. But recommendations aren't enough. We need implementation, and implementation requires people who understand both the capability and the culture." The general paused. "How would you feel about expanding your role beyond operational missions?" Sarah glanced at Thornton, trying to read his expression. The colonel's face was neutral, but something in his eyes suggested he already knew what was coming. "Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand. We're establishing a K-9 integration school at Fort Bragg, advanced training for handlers and tactical teams focused on maximizing K-9 operational effectiveness through partnership development. We want you to be part of the founding instructor cadre." The words took a moment to process. "You want me to teach, Ma'am. I want you to transform how every branch of Special Operations thinks about K-9 capability, instructor role, curriculum development, protocol design. You'd maintain operational certification and deploy periodically to keep skills current, but your primary mission would be education." Sarah looked down at Ryder. The dog gazed back at her with perfect calm, waiting for whatever came next. 7 years old now, still fit and capable, but the clock was ticking on his operational career. In another 2 or 3 years, he would need to retire from active missions. "What about Ryder, ma'am? Would he be part of the program?" "Absolutely. He'd be your demonstration partner for training exercises. We'd also bring him to facilities where new protocols are being implemented, so personnel can see firsthand what optimal partnership looks like." The general pulled out a tablet showing preliminary curriculum outlines and facility designs. "You wouldn't be doing this alone. Torres has already agreed to join the program, so have 3 other handlers from Marine Corps and Army units. But we want you as lead instructor because you're the one who fought for these protocols when it mattered." Thornton spoke for the first time. "Chen, you changed my mind about something I thought I understood completely. That's a rare skill. The military needs people who can challenge assumptions and prove there's a better way." Sarah thought about the handlers who had supported her during the protocol fight, the operators who trusted K-9 teams because they had seen what partnership could accomplish, the specialists like Webb, whose lives depended on that trust. "If I accept this role, I want input on curriculum design. The program needs to emphasize that partnership isn't just about training. It's about respect. Respect for the capability of K-9s, respect for the expertise of handlers, respect for the bond that makes everything else possible." "Agreed," General Reeves said immediately. "We're not looking for someone to follow a template. We're looking for someone to create the template. Then I accept, ma'am, on the condition that Ryder remains my partner throughout his working life, and that when he retires, he stays with me. Already written into the orders, Lieutenant. The general smiled. We learned from Colonel Thornton's experience. Separating bonded partners isn't just bad for morale, it's operationally stupid. Thornton handed Sarah a folder. Your promotion to Lieutenant Commander is effective immediately. Transfer orders to Fort Bragg will be processed within 60 days. Until then, you'll continue operations here while developing preliminary curriculum. Sarah opened the folder, seeing official orders with her name and new rank. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, Special Operations K-9 Integration School, Lead Instructor, Protocol Development. Congratulations, Commander, General Reeves said formally. You've earned this. After the General and Colonel departed, Sarah sat in the shade with Ryder, processing what had just happened. Torres approached carrying 2 bottles of water, one of which he handed to Sarah. Heard you got promoted, he said. You heard about that already? It's a small base. Also, I might have been listening from inside the administrative building. Sarah laughed despite herself. You're terrible. I'm efficient. There's a difference. Torres sat beside her, watching the training area where handlers were still working through drills. You know what this means, right? You're going to shape how every handler in special operations thinks about their dogs. That's not just a career change, that's legacy.